I didn't think a person could notice a heartbeat they weren't supposed to have. But the way she looked at me, steady with that quiet kind of confidence, made my chest feel like it was caught mid-step. It happened in the waiting area of Dr. Levin's office, of all places. I wasn't there for anything dramatic, just a sprained wrist from lifting an engine block wrong at the shop, the smell of antiseptic, old magazines, and the faint hum of a soda machine filled the room. It was late, the kind of late where the lights felt too white, like they were exposing every flaw in the paint in me. She walked in like she didn't belong to the same world the rest of us sat in. Not because she was flashy, the opposite, really. Dark jeans, hair pulled back like she was trying not to be noticed. But she carried herself with a kind of certainty, like every step was chosen, not just taken. She sat 2 seats away, glanced at my wrist wrapped in that ridiculous temporary brace, and said, "You work with your hands?" I nodded. "Auto shop." A pause. Not awkward, just quiet enough to make me notice the sound of her turning a page she wasn't reading. "That explains the oil," she said finally, the faintest smile breaking across her face like it didn't want to be there but couldn't help it. I looked down. Yeah, a streak of grease on my forearm. I wiped it on my jeans, which only made a darker smear. "Guess I should have washed up first." "No," she said, and her voice dipped low, calm. "It suits you." I laughed, too quickly, like I didn't know what else to do with my mouth. My ears got hot, which is probably why the nurse, the younger one at the desk, glanced over and said it loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Why are you blushing?" I wanted the floor to open up. I muttered something like, "Guess it's warm in here." But the nurse just laughed, already bored, already onto her phone. The woman beside me didn't laugh. She just looked at me. Not at the nurse, not at the stupid pink in my cheeks, just at me, like she was waiting to see what I'd do with the moment. And I couldn't look back for more than a heartbeat. They called my name. I stood, too fast, almost forgetting my jacket. She leaned slightly, like she might say something, but stopped herself, fingers pressing lightly against the edge of her seat as if holding a thought still. I wanted to ask her name. I didn't. Inside the exam room, the nurse wrapped my wrist in something sturdier, made a few jokes I didn't catch. I just kept hearing the way her voice had wrapped around those 3 words. "It suits you." Soft, careful, like she'd meant more than she said. When I walked back out, she was gone. No trace she'd even been there except for the half-folded magazine still on the chair. Turned to an ad for cruise ships, a pen tucked into the spine like a placeholder. I stood there a second too long, jacket in one hand, brace itching against my skin. The soda machine hummed. The nurse typed. The world moved like nothing had happened. But something had. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. I didn't see her again for 2 weeks. Long enough for it to feel like maybe I'd made the whole thing up. That look, her voice, the way the room had gone suddenly too quiet. Then my boss at the shop tells me one of our regulars had their car quit outside of Levin's office. And guess who gets sent to check it out? It was hers. Black sedan, mid-2000s, hood propped up in a way that made it look tired. She stood beside it with her arms crossed, not angry, just contained, like someone who knew how to carry frustration without showing it. "Guess we meet again," I said, trying to sound casual but hearing the too bright edge in my own voice. She blinked like it took her a second to place me. Then, the wrist. I held it up, brace off now but still stiff. "Better." A nod, a small smile, the kind people give before they remember they probably shouldn't smile. I bent over the engine, but my eyes kept flicking sideways. Not on purpose, just drawn. Her nails were short, no polish, a little uneven like she cut them herself between everything else she had to do. Her laugh, when I dropped a socket wrench on my boot and cursed under my breath, was soft, almost hidden, like she was afraid to let it out. And under her eyes, faint shadows, not from makeup, but from being tired, the kind that doesn't go away with one good night's sleep. "You look like you've had a long week," I said, voice muffled in the engine bay. Month, she corrected, then shook her head as if she hadn't meant to say that. Something in the way she looked away after, a tiny exhale like regret for letting a piece of herself slip out, made my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with wanting to understand. You run the whole world or just a small piece of it? I asked, half joking, hoping to make it safe again. Her lips curved, but not into a smile. More like a line she was holding. Feels like both, some days. I tightened a bolt, tested the battery, listened for a click that finally came. Try it now, I said. She got in, turned the key. The engine coughed, then caught. She let out a breath I didn't realize she'd been holding. When she stepped out, she stood closer than before. Not by much, just enough to feel like it meant something. What do I owe you? She asked. I waved it off. Shop'll bill you. Not me. A pause. She looked at the ground, then back at me. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. Rain has a way of making the world too quiet. That night it hammered the shop's tin roof, steady, heavy, like it was trying to wash the whole town away. We'd stayed open late. Someone had to pick up their car after hours, and I was cleaning tools when I heard tires on wet pavement and a door slam shut. It was her. No appointment. No broken car this time. Just her standing there in the doorway, water dripping from her jacket, hair loose and damp at the edges like she'd been driving with the window cracked. I didn't know where else to go, she said, and then caught herself, like she hadn't meant to sound that honest. I grabbed a rag, wiped my hands. Everything okay? She hesitated, then stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The rain got louder, like it didn't want to be left out of the conversation. I was supposed to meet someone, she said. Didn't. No explanation. No details. Just that. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything that wouldn't sound like I was asking for more than she wanted to give. We sat on a couple of stools near the workbench. The shop smelled like wet concrete and gasoline. Not exactly romantic, but it was quiet, and for some reason that quiet felt safer than anywhere else. For a long while we didn't talk. She traced the edge of a socket set with her finger like it meant something. I watched the way her shoulders stayed tight, like even sitting still was work. Then, out of nowhere, she laughed, soft, nervous, like she was afraid of how it sounded. I don't do this, she said. Do what? Sit with strangers in garages, waiting for the rain to stop. I smiled. We're not strangers. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp at first, then softer, like she was fighting two thoughts at the same time. The quiet got heavier. Not uncomfortable, just full. I wanted to tell her I hadn't stopped thinking about her since the clinic. I wanted to ask why she'd come here, of all places, if it wasn't for something she wasn't saying. Instead I said, "You want coffee? It's terrible, but it's hot." She nodded, almost grateful for the detour. While I poured it from the chipped pot in the corner, her phone buzzed on the bench. A name flashed, a man's name. She stared at it too long, then flipped it over, face down, unread. I set her cup down in front of her. Our fingers brushed, not by accident, not quite on purpose either. Neither of us moved away. Her breath caught, quiet, just enough for me to notice. My hand was halfway to hers when she said, "You should go now." And I did. But only my body left that room. The next time we saw each other, it wasn't planned. She came by the shop again, late afternoon, sun low enough to paint everything in that color between gold and gone. No rain this time, just heat, the kind that sticks. I was sweeping up when I saw her car pull in. My chest tightened like it had been waiting for something it didn't know how to name. She stepped out, not rushed, not casual either, like every move cost a decision. "Car's fine," she said, leaning on the door, not coming closer yet. I figured. I leaned the broom against the wall. For a second we just stood there, two people with nothing to fix and too much to say. She walked in slow until we were maybe 3 feet apart. The smell of warm asphalt and motor oil hung between us like static. "This is stupid," she said finally, soft, not angry. I swallowed. "Probably." A long pause. Neither of us looked away, like we were daring the other to blink first. "What are we doing?" she asked. The words came out like she didn't want to own them, like they'd just fallen from some part of her that usually stays locked. "I don't know," I said. Honest. Too honest. She shook her head, a small, sharp movement like she wanted to shake herself loose from something invisible. "This?" she started, then stopped, biting the inside of her cheek. "This isn't my life. It can't be." I wanted to step forward. I didn't. "You think I planned any of this?" I said, a little rougher than I meant to. "I see you, and everything just stops. I don't even know what that means." She closed her eyes, just for a breath. Opened them again slower, like it hurt. "You're too young," she said quietly. Not as a judgment, as if saying it might make the pull weaker. "Yeah," I said. "I know." Silence again. A real one. Heavy. Full of all the things we couldn't say without breaking something. Her hand moved like she might reach for me, then stopped halfway, fingers curling in on themselves. I felt my own pulse in my throat. The air between us wasn't just air anymore. It felt like pressure, like choice, like danger we didn't want to name. Neither of us moved. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. The shift didn't come like a crash. Came like a door left ajar. She came by on a Thursday. Early. Not even the lunch rush yet. The shop smelled like rubber and stale coffee. "I don't want to talk in the open," she said. Not unkind. Just direct. We went into the tiny office behind the garage. Fluorescent light, a metal desk, a chair with a cracked seat. Not the kind of place for anything personal, but suddenly it was. She didn't sit right away. Just stood there, arms folded, then unfolded, like she wasn't sure where to put herself. "I got a voicemail last night," she said. "I didn't ask, just waited. It's been 10 years since my husband died." The words landed like something she hadn't said out loud in a long time. "I don't talk about him." People get quiet. They tilt their heads. They start thinking about casseroles and widows and moving on. And I hate all of it. I didn't move. My throat felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with me. "He was younger than me," she went on. "Not by a lot. Just enough that people had opinions. He used to bring me coffee at work just because. He had this stupid grin." She stopped, swallowed. "That voicemail," she said. "It was from his brother. Said he found an old photo. He sent it. Him leaning against a car, laughing. Grease on his hands." She looked up at me then, eyes glassy but no tears. Just raw. "You remind me of him," she said. "Not just how you look. It's how you don't fill the silence. How you watch. How you listen. It's like a corner of my life I buried just sat up. I felt like my ribs were too small for the weight in my chest. "I'm not him," I said quietly. "I know. But you're not talking about cars," I added. No, the air between us changed. Not like before. Not that sharp pull full of danger. This was slower. Deeper. Like gravity adjusting. She sat then, finally, like her knees had been holding back more than weight. For the first time, she didn't try to hide how tired she looked. Not just from work. From carrying a life that never really got to set itself down. She took a breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. And for the first time, she looked at me without fear. We didn't meet somewhere new. No restaurant, no getaway. Just her living room. A week later, lights low. A mug of tea cooling on the table between us. She called. Not with a plan. Just, "If you're not busy, come by." I wasn't busy. Not in any way that mattered. Her house was simple. clean in the way of someone who'd learned to keep life manageable. Photos tucked away, not displayed. A shelf of books, none of them straight. A faint smell of lavender under the coffee table, like a candle had been blown out a day too soon. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, like there was still a line we weren't sure we should cross. "Been thinking a lot," she said finally. "Me too." Silence. Not heavy, just honest. "I keep trying to make sense of it," she said. "You, me, the timing, the age, the everything. I tell myself to stay away, and then I don't." I rubbed my palms against my jeans. "Slow. Feels the same here." She leaned back, stared at the ceiling like the answer might be hiding in the plaster. "I don't want to blow up your life," she said. "And I don't want to be a mistake you regret." Her eyes closed briefly, like both those truths hurt and healed at the same time. When she opened them again, they found mine and didn't let go. "This isn't simple," she said. "No," I agreed. "But it's real." I nodded. My throat felt dry, but not from fear, from something settling. We sat like that for a while, just breathing, the kind of quiet where neither of us had to fill it. Then, slow, like we'd rehearsed it 100 times in some other life, I shifted closer. She didn't move away. Her hand was on her lap. Mine found it without asking, not grabbing, just touching, warm. She turned her palm up, let our fingers tangle like they'd always known how. We didn't kiss. We didn't confess. We just sat there, two lives suddenly less lonely, less certain, more alive. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down, and that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. It's been months since that night on her couch. We never had a big moment. No dramatic kiss in the rain, no speeches. We just kept showing up. Quietly, carefully. Some days it feels almost ordinary. Two people meeting for coffee, going for a drive, fixing her car when it rattles again. But underneath, it's not ordinary at all. It's deliberate. It's chosen. I still catch myself looking at her the way I did in the clinic waiting room, like the world just narrowed to a single frame. She still shakes her head at me sometimes, a small smile hiding in the corner of her mouth, like she can't believe we ended up here. She's softer now. Not weaker, never that. Just less guarded. Sometimes she laughs without pulling it back. Sometimes she lets her hands stay in mine a second longer in public, like maybe we're done pretending we're invisible. And me? I stopped thinking of my age like a wall. It's just a number that means I've got more ahead of me, and maybe someone worth walking it with. I don't feel like I'm chasing something anymore. Feels like we're building something. Slowly. Honestly. Love, if that's what this is becoming, isn't what I thought it would be. It's not fireworks. It's not perfection. It's not easy. It's two people trying anyway. Two people finding comfort in quiet rooms, in honest silences, in hands reaching out without words. Sometimes we talk about him, her husband, not a shadow between us, just a person who mattered, who still does. It doesn't scare me anymore. It makes the space feel honest, real. And maybe that's the point, that love isn't about replacing. It's about adding. It's about saying, I see where you've been, and I want to walk where you're going. When I look at her now, I don't see an age gap. I see the way she watches the world. I see how she steadies me without even trying. I see a woman who has lived, who still chooses, who still risks. And I get to be there. If you're watching this, wondering if it's worth it, letting someone in, letting yourself feel when it doesn't make sense on paper, I don't have the answer. I only know this. Sometimes the thing that scares you is the same thing that saves you. We didn't plan this. We almost didn't let it happen. But we did. And I'm grateful. Because sometimes love doesn't announce itself. It just sits quietly beside you, waiting for you to notice. What about you? Ever had someone walk into your life at exactly the wrong time, and somehow it turned out to be the right one?